And so, the hunt begins again.
Hello everyone, this is Aegon of Astora, and welcome to the first episode of Bloodborne Let's Talk Lore. This is a lore-centric playthrough where we explore not only the story of Bloodborne, but also how the story comes together through the in-game lore, and how the lore connects in turn with the mechanics of the game itself. We won't be getting into any of these topics in great detail today, as this episode will serve mostly as an introduction to the playthrough. With that said, one of the mechanics that is new to Bloodborne are the handwritten scrawls, and this one reads, "Seek Paleblood to transcend the hunt." So keep that in mind going forward, because Paleblood is obviously going to be a topic of thorough conversation going forward. We're going to be trying a few new things for this playthrough, first of which you'll notice at the bottom of your screen. And that is, at various points throughout the episode, this navigation menu will pop up so that you might skip ahead or rewind the episode at your leisure. On the basis of feedback I've received in the past, I'm also going to be moving to post-commentary, at least for now, to test it out. And the reason for that is, for any of you who are familiar with my past playthroughs, all of which have been live commentary, you're likely familiar with how I struggle at times to balance actually doing commentary and playing the game. So we're going to be trying post-commentary to see if that might help ameliorate the situation a little bit. I had a little bit of trouble with this werewolf here. Usually I can get out of the way without him chasing me, so I'm not sure how I messed that up there, but it should go without saying that you should only be watching this playthrough if spoilers are not a big deal to you. There will be spoilers galore to come, even in the early episodes. So if you have not actually finished the game yet, you should probably click off and go finish it. As far as the lore itself goes, I'll be referencing two specific texts throughout this playthrough. The first being the official guide by Future Press, and the second being the Paleblood Hunt, an incredibly helpful and comprehensive analysis of the story of Bloodborne by DMC Redgrave. Equally, I'll be relying on those of you out there watching this, and that is, I encourage you to chime in using the comment section below with your thoughts on anything I discuss in this episode or any of the upcoming episodes. Hear the screech of the cleric beast in the background there. I will return to this topic of discussion in just a minute, because we're about to fire back to the Hunter's Dream. So here we are in the Hunter's Dream. You'll notice I had to fix my gestures because that first bit was actually... I actually recorded that first bit separately. The reason being I forgot to actually read the note that says, "Seek Paleblood to transcend the hunt," and that's a rather important piece of lore that I missed in the first few seconds of my first recording. And so we're going to say hello to Yharnam, who's obviously a crucial, central figure to the story of Bloodborne. So let's see what he has to say.
Aha! You must be the new hunter. Welcome to the Hunter's Dream. This will be your home for now. I am... Yharnam. Friend to you hunters. You're sure to be in a fine haze about now, but don't think too hard about all of this. Just go out and kill a few beasts. It's for your own good. You know, it's just what hunters do. You'll get used to it. This was once a safe haven for hunters. A workshop where hunters used blood to enhance their weapons and flesh. We don't have as many tools as we once did, but you're welcome to use whatever you find. Even the dog, should it please you. This was... Oh,
So very interesting. One thing that I've become kind of fixated on, and I'm not sure if this is just inconsequential or if it actually is a thing that matters, and that is how much he struggles to actually say his own name. I'm inclined to believe that he struggles in that manner because, yeah, he's been here for so very long and is just so tired and ready, more or less, to just give up. But of course he can't, because he's being held captive by the moon presence, as we saw in the introduction, or at least a recreation I did of how Gehrman was initially trapped in the hunter's dream by the moon presence. But going back to what I was saying, if you know anything about me, you know that community engagement is important to me, and so is attribution and credit. So while I may not be able to discuss everyone's comments in the coming episodes, I will do my best to incorporate your thoughts into my plans for coming episodes, and of course, give you full credit for doing so. After all, it's called Bloodborne Let's Talk Lore for a reason. Well, actually there are two reasons. The first being, of course, that it's a play on words for Let's Play, and the second is that it's a playthrough that works best as a two-way conversation. So, not me talking at you, but us talking together. Item descriptions. Blood vial. Special blood used in administration restores HP. Once a patient has had their blood ministered, a unique but common treatment in Yharnam, successive infusions recall the first and are all the more invigorating for it. No surprise that most Yharnamites are heavy users of blood. Okay, past Aegon. Move on to the next one, please. Thank you. So, Quicksilver bullets. Special bullets used with hunter firearms. Ordinary bullets have no effect on beasts, and so Quicksilver bullets fused with the wielder's own blood must be employed. The strength of Quicksilver bullets depends greatly on blood tinge. Molotov cocktail. Explodes in raging flames when thrown against an object. One of the oldest hunter tools available in the workshop. Since the tragedy that struck old Yharnam, fire has become a staple in beast hunts and is thought to cleanse impurity. Certain types of beasts have an abnormal fear of flame. And so Old Yharnam is obviously a very, very important place, and we'll be talking about that in enormous detail in the coming episodes. Of course, nothing special low-rise for the Pebble, but then there's also the Yharnam set. Ludwig, the first hunter of the Healing Church, once recruited Yharnamites to serve as hunters. This hunter's attire was made for new recruits and has excellent straightforward defense, but not nearly enough to allow an ordinary man to stand any real chance against the beasts. And so this, as we'll see, especially when we get the I guess, counterpart to that set, the Healing Church's shift in strategy towards arming the populace as opposed to operating in secret, but we'll get into that later. We're actually going to start by returning to Central Yharnam, but more specifically, Yosefka's clinic. So rather than starting back in the room where we started the game, we start in the room after it. And when we return up here, we see that the door is closed and there's a talk option. So let's see what's up here.
Are you out on the hunt? Then I'm very sorry, but I cannot open this door. I am Yosefka. The patients here in my clinic must not be exposed to infection. I know that you hunt for us, for our town, but I'm sorry. Please. This is all that I can do. Now, go. and good hunting. Are you still in need of something? But I have nothing more to offer. Please, try to understand my position. I can only pray for a fruitful hunt.
So I neglected here to look at the item description for Yosefka's blood vial, but that's something I'll do in the next episode. We're going to return in and actually take out this beast, I guess. I wanted to call it a werewolf, but... And in this moment, my rust, after having played so much Scholar of the First Sin in the last month, really showed through. Or really shined through, rather. But I did eventually triumph over it. But something that I've seen discussed on Reddit or thrown around on Reddit. I know that Epic Name Bro discussed it in the context of his own Bloodborne playthrough. But the potential for some or all of the blood being used in administration, at least that which is not specifically, the blood of the Great Ones or the tainted blood, the potential for that blood to be menstrual blood. And that's something that's really interesting because it would seem to make a lot of sense given the focus in much of the game on the moon and in lunar cycles, and of course, menstruation is something that was once thought to be closely tied to the moon's cycles and whatnot. And there's a lot of astronomical and astrological stuff. I love when I accidentally trigger the specters and am very surprised by it. We have some more dialogue coming up here in a second from Gilbert.
Oh, you must be a hunter. And not one from around here either. I'm Gilbert, a fellow outsider. You must have had a fine time of it. Yharnam has a special way of treating guests. Well, I don't think I could stand if I wanted to, but I'm willing to help if there's anything that can be done. This town is cursed. Whatever your reasons might be, you should plan a swift exit. Whatever can be gained from this place, it will do more harm than good. Paleblood, you say? Never heard of it. But if it's blood you're interested in, you should try the Healing Church. The Church controls all knowledge on blood ministration and all varieties of blood. Across the valley to the east of Yharnam lies the town of the Healing Church, known as the Cathedral Ward. And deep within Cathedral Ward is the old Grand Cathedral, the birthplace of the Healing Church's special blood. Or so they say. Yharnamites don't share much with outsiders. Normally they wouldn't let you near the place, but the hunt is on tonight. This might be your chance. Across the valley to the east of Yharnam, you'll find the Cathedral Ward. Deep within lies the old main cathedral, said to be the source of blood. I haven't heard of pale blood, but that's your best bet if it's anything to do with unique types of blood.
So there's a few things that we're going to take from that as things of interest that Gilbert mentioned. The first being, obviously, that he's not doing well. He said that he doesn't think he could stand if he wanted to. So that means, to me, two things. One is that, he doesn't really have any motivation to stand, and two, that, as he said, if he wanted to, he doesn't think he could. He's weak and frail, and he's coughing. And it was on that basis during my first playthrough, together with the fact that he offers some very, very helpful advice. And he mentions that he too is an outsider. And so it was on those bases that during my blind playthrough, I described him as the crestfallen hunter, because he seemed very much to fill that same role that's filled by, the crestfallen warriors from Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1, and Dark Souls 2. But there's something to note in his dialogue, and again, you can see just some very sloppy play throughout this episode, so again, I apologize for that. But yeah, so returning to Gilbert, the thing he mentions is that apparently we asked him about Paleblood, and he says, Paleblood, never heard of it. So that would seem to indicate to me that while he may be it may not be entirely incorrect to describe him as a crestfallen hunter, because these gentlemen here are themselves hunters in a way, but he is not a special hunter like us, like the player character, like what DMC Redgrave describes as, he calls the Paleblood hunter. And so there are 3 Paleblood hunters that we know about, the first of course being the player character, and the second and the third being Eileen and Jura. And so the Paleblood hunter, for one reason or another, is connected to the dream in a manner that I don't fully understand yet. But if, in fact, Gilbert was himself at one time a Paleblood hunter, then he would have known what Paleblood is, because he would have woken up in that room and he would have read the handwritten scroll that was there that says, seek Paleblood to transcend the hunt. And so a lot of these really subtle environmental clues and implicit methods of storytelling that, as I've mentioned in past playthroughs, but I'll repeat at length probably during this one as well, that make the Souls games so very special, in that there's no top-down narrative style. Everything, about the game, not everything, of course not everything is up to interpretation. The boundaries, the guidelines are set in a way by the developers, and then everything else is filled in by the player. And we can see here, as I mentioned, that those gentlemen are themselves hunters, and that is, as I learned while reading through the Paleblood Hunt by DMC Redgrave, Ludwig, rather than, when he took over the workshop, the Hunter's Workshop, rather than operating in secrecy, he armed the population. And as we can see here, the population took it upon themselves to, start burning beasts at the stake, walking around the town, but at the same time, using the infected blood, and then they too eventually fell victim to the Scourge of the Beast. So that was something that confused me so much during my not just during my first playthrough, during my first few playthroughs, was why are these guys, who are clearly beasts, calling me? And you can see, I think it's these guys, yeah, their left arm is much longer than their right arm. And yeah, so they're wandering around central Yharnam, hunting for beasts, and unbeknownst to themselves, they too are beasts. So just a really, really interesting thing, and something that could, in a way, be kind of applied to other aspects. And I usually am terrible at pairing this guy, but somehow got it on the first try this time. And really don't understand the reason for him being there, other than perhaps maybe to teach people about parrying, about the importance of visceral attacks, because if you, with a base level weapon, try to actually just R1 spam on him, then you're not going to have a good time, needless to say.
Lads, you've come on. You'd open the door on a night of a hunt. Away with you, now!
So, as we'll see with a couple of the other nameless NPCs who are behind these doors as well, all of the people in the town seem more or less aware of how the hunts work. And so that would seem to indicate that they've seen many hunts before, and that provided that they survive this one, they'll see many hunts in the future. Something else that, I've heard this game described as a Souls-like or a Souls-esque game, but no, this is a Souls game. It's made by FromSoft. It has virtually all the same mechanics, but just with, things being reskinned, different setting. It's still a Souls game, even though what you accumulate are blood echoes and not souls. Even the sound effect for accumulating souls is the same. So really, it's yeah. Sounds like nitpicking, but I very, very much do disagree with describing this as anything other than a Souls game. But I could be alone in that. You can leave a comment below, of course, if you disagree. It's totally fine to disagree. That's what, in my view, community interaction in these contexts is all about, is just having a conversation about these things, because as I've said in the past, it's not up to me to dictate anything. These things are, for the most part, open to interpretation, and as long as we're having, a civil conversation about it, we can totally disagree. There's nothing at all wrong with that. So as mentioned previously, we will also be talking about how this story of Bloodborne connects to, enriches, and is enriched by the mechanics of the game itself. I'll be speaking in great detail in future episodes, but a few mechanics in particular. The one that most interests me is the relationship between insight and frenzy. And that's something that I don't feel like I have a firm grasp on. It's something that I believe Redgrave talks about in his Paleblood Hunt. He certainly talks about the significance of insight and what it means. But I think I have some unique things to say about it, just kind of given my personal situatedness in what I do for a living. As a junior scholar, for those of you who aren't aware, I'm a PhD student in going, I believe, into my third year. And part of the reason why the Souls games interest me so much, and why I so fell in love with it with the series when I first played Dark Souls in mid-2013.
I don't reckon you're from round here. Well, stuck outside on a night of the hunt. Oh, you poor, poor thing.
I love that she does. Just so, and once again, they seem to know, they seem to be aware of how the hunt works, and that they need to remain cooped up at any cost in order to survive. I initially was god-awful at pairing these guys, but I believe they're called trolls or something. I have my future press strategy guide, and as I've said, I've relied on it in kind of building my understanding of the story, but it's so enormous that I hate these crows so much, especially just the noise they make. Makes my ears want to bleed, as I've said before. If you listen really closely there, you should have been able to hear a familiar tune. Did you hear that? Well, don't worry if you didn't, because we're going to be returning to that later. But yeah, I started playing Dark Souls 1 on the Xbox 360, and I don't know what happened with this dog here. It was like inside his cage, but on top of it. And see, when he burst out, the cage opened as though it was inside of the cage. But I first started playing Dark Souls 1 on the 360 in mid-2013, and that was around the time when I was working on my master's thesis. And I actually studied business management for my undergrad, and I'm currently in something very much not businessy. It's an interdisciplinary program where we kind of have to know everything. So humanities, social science, history, philosophy, so on and so forth. And so I struggled a fair bit during the early stages of my graduate studies, just simply because a lot of the stuff was kind of over my head. But I got into the program kind of based on my perseverance and my dedication, and how I was able to demonstrate that, even though I wasn't intimately familiar with the stuff I would be studying, that, I had a demonstrated past of having the ability to pick these things up rather easily. And so understanding how history actually works, as opposed to, how I was taught history works, was something that was a huge struggle for me. We've got another scrawl here. When the hunt began, the Healing Church left us, blocking the great bridge to the cathedral ward, as old Yharnam burned to the ground that moonlit night. So once again, old Yharnam will be, old Yharnam will be something that we come back to time and again, because as Redgrave points out in the Paleblood Hunt, it's essentially where the Scourge of the Beast as we know it in many ways began. I'm not sure if that's exactly how Redgrave put it, but that's kind of my interpretation of it. That's at least where things intensified, where things kind of spun out of control. But we'll get to that once again in future episodes. But yeah, I initially, just didn't really understand how, I had various preconceived notions about how history works, how the world works, and when I got to graduate school, I started reading all these things that basically contradicted everything I thought I knew about the same. And parallel to that, running parallel to all that was, my start with Dark Souls and trying to understand the story of the same, and how, implicit storytelling really mirrors the way that history actually works versus the way, we're told history works, and that is that they're all stories about great men specifically, making great discoveries, and everything works in a linear kind of teleological format from the past to the present in a way that things are always getting better, even though that's not necessarily true. We got some more dialogue coming up here.
Oh, you're a hunter, aren't you? Then, well, do you know of any safe places? I've heard I have. Shutting up indoors isn't always enough. Well, if you hunters got off your asses, you wouldn't be in this mess. You're obligated to help me, you hear? So what'll it be? Are you going to tell me you're not? Yeah, I should have known. You're good for nothing. No respect for the elderly is what that is. Yeah. That lot of good you outsiders do. Go on. Admit it. You think we're all mad, don't you? Well, go and stop it. I know all your tricks.
So the Lonely Old Deer is someone we'll be returning to, along with, we're going to be trying to do as many of the NPC quest lines as is humanly possible, and I'm going to hope that I don't screw any of them up, as in a couple of cases it's kind of easy to do, so I'm going to be using the PlayStation Plus kind of backup feature where you can upload your saves to the cloud for certain events to ensure that if I do screw something up, that there still exists the possibility of me reverting back to an old save. But in trying to wrap up this thread really quickly, I started playing Dark Souls, and in particular the story that I'm going to have to stop myself once again. This is why I switched to post-commentary, and it's happening again.
Oh, a hunter, are you? And an outsider? What a mess you've been caught up in. And tonight of all nights. Here, to welcome the new hunter. prepare yourself for the worst. There are no humans left. They're all flesh-hungry beasts now. Still lingering about. What's wrong? A hunter unnerved by a few beasts? No matter. Without fear in our hearts, we're little different from the beasts themselves. What are you still doing here? Enough trembling in your boots. A hunter must hunt.
So yet again, another very, very, very interesting NPC. One of the 3 Paleblood hunters that we know of, including ourselves and also Jura. And so we'll be discussing Eileen, of course, in great depth in later episodes. The story of Artorias in Dark Souls 1, for me, was one of those moments where I started to understand how history actually works. And while I won't get into that statement in great detail, because I do plan after this playthrough is wrapped up, at some point, doing a Dark Souls 1 Let's Talk Lore playthrough, where I will go into that in great depth. But basically the story about how Artorias pre-DLC was this heroic figure who traversed the abyss and, fought it back. But then in reality, you go there and you see that he was, while he was a well-meaning warrior, that he ultimately was not the hero he was made out to be. And that, to me, it really echoed a lot of the stuff that I was reading for my coursework at the time. And so all of this isn't to say that Dark Souls taught me how history works, but rather how Dark Souls helped me understand how history works on the one hand, while my coursework helped me understand kind of how the history of Dark Souls works, or the archaeological approach to understanding the lore in Dark Souls works. So that's one thing that I'll be talking about in detail later on as well, and that's going to be the buzzword of this episode. That's something I'm going to be talking about later, I promise. But how things are very infrequently, if ever, work one way. Things are very rarely actually transmitted top down. Everything works 2 ways, at least 2 ways, and there's always feedback going back and forth, despite kind of how things are perceived in the history books that were taught about in elementary school and high school and whatnot. But with all that aside, yes, Insight and Frenzy. So, to put it simply, the more you know about how the world works, kind of the more stress you put on your mental faculties. And that's especially been true for me since I've started doing my studies, and as I mentioned while I was struggling in the early stages of my master's, my mental health was a concern for a little bit, just because it was so hard trying to, and I know that that's kind of a different point than is being made in this game, which is about the Lovecraftian idea of not necessarily being able to comprehend the secrets of the universe for these beings who are so much greater and otherworldly and superhuman compared to us. But it's something that I'll be talking about later. Madman's knowledge. Skull of an enlightened madman used to gain insight. Skull of a madman touched by the wisdom of the Great One. Making contact with eldritch wisdom is a blessing, for even if it drives one mad, it allows one to serve a grander purpose, for posterity. And so that's kind of consistent, I guess, with my view on the reasons why I kept going with my studies, even though I found it so incredibly hard at first. I didn't want to simply be a cog in a capitalist wheel. I wanted to do something better. And so, if you listen really, really closely, the stupid bell rang, so I decided, okay, I might as well open the gate. But Gascoigne's daughter, who I've taken to calling Daughter Gascoigne rather than Father Gascoigne, so Daughter Gascoigne is sitting there playing with the music box. Just so heartbreaking.
Who are you? I don't know your voice, but I know that smell. Are you a hunter? Please will you look for my mum? Daddy never came back from the hunt, and she went to find him, but now she's gone too. I'm all alone and scared. Really? Oh, thank you. My mum wears a red jeweled brooch. It's so big and beautiful. You won't miss it. Oh, I mustn't forget. If you find my mum, give her this music box. It plays one of Daddy's favourite songs, and when Daddy forgets us, we play it for him so he remembers. Mum's so silly running off without it. My mum wears a red jeweled brooch. It's so big and beautiful. You won't miss it. Oh, and if you find her, give her the keys. I know you can.
And now that she's given us the music box, you no longer hear it. Just silence. And well, to be sure, I'm reasonably certain that I'm not the first one to notice this, but a small music box received from a young Yharnam girl plays a song shared by her mother and father. Inside the lid is a small scrap of paper, perhaps an old message. Two names can be made out, however faintly: Viola and Gascoigne. So as I was saying, I'm certain that I'm not the first person to have noticed that. But I noticed it while doing some video editing because I have a habit of, I guess more out of paranoia than anything else, of playing with the volume really low, especially when I'm recording live commentary. And that occasionally I'll just kind of forget to turn the volume back up, and also because I have things on in the background. I'll watch TV and stuff while playing the game in the background. So I just never noticed that, at least until I was doing some video editing and I noticed I heard the song and I thought, am I just hearing that in my head? And realized that no, she's actually just sitting there playing with the music box, which is just so tragic. Another kind of tragic thing is these guys here in the sewer just, I don't even know what to make of them. I should really pull up my guide and start looking at some of the enemy names because that's something I'm very spotty on, whereas for at least Dark Souls 2 and to some extent Dark Souls 1, I'm pretty good at knowing the names of most of the enemies. But yes, we'll be returning to Daughter Gascoigne, of course, in future episodes. And Father Gascoigne as well, of course. The relationship between Insight and Frenzy, it's still a point I haven't finished. Basically, it's something that really interests me, and we're going to be talking about it a lot, even though Frenzy is a mechanic that I find very annoying from a gameplay perspective. It's one that, from a story perspective, and in the way in which it links the story and the gameplay is just brilliant, in my opinion. We'll also be talking about, as I may have mentioned earlier, the cyclical nature of the Souls games in general, and of this one in particular, which is part of the reason why I set up the intro in the way that I did, to kind of show that So The Hunt Begins Again is really a reflection of, you know, how long Garamond's been trapped in the Hunter's Dream by the Moon Presence, and the ways in which, you know, the only two Pale Blood Hunters we know of are, other than the player character, are Jura and Eileen. and both of them, for separate reasons, which we'll discuss later, decided against taking him on. That they submitted because, they had seen too much. They had been through too much. They didn't want to have any part in the hunt anymore. And I can't say I blame them. And there's also a very interesting meta-narrative going on there with the 3 endings and the choices therein. And a meta-narrative that is really enriched by the ability to view via the PlayStation Network what percentage of players chose each ending, or rather, what percentage of players have the trophy for each ending. So I guess it wouldn't tell you in aggregate terms how many people have chosen each, but there are some people who just, for whatever reason, only played the game once or twice and then don't play it again. But that aside, Saw Hunter Badge. Badge crafted long ago at the workshop attests to one's prowess as a hunter. The workshop is gone. No group recognizes this meaningless badge except the messengers in the bath, who understand its profundity. Certain things can only be entrusted with a hunter in possession of this badge, or so they believe. Saw Spear, one of the trick weapons of the workshop commonly used by those who dedicate themselves to the hunt. This saw, effective at drawing the blood of beasts, transforms into a medium-range spear. The saw with its set of bloodletting teeth has become a symbol of the hunt and only grows in effectiveness the more grotesquely transformed the beast. And I was trying to see here if it were all visible what the attack bonus versus beast is, but I couldn't seem to figure it out. Hunter Axe, one of the trick weapons of the workshop, commonly used on the hunt. Retains the qualities of an axe, but offers a wider palette of attacks by transforming. Boasts a heavy blunt attack, leading to high rally potential, so that is to say, regain potential. No matter their past, beasts are no more than beasts. Some choose this axe to play the executioner. And so that statement, of course, directly contradicts that which we'll hear from Jorah later on, but is consistent with that which we heard from Eileen earlier in this episode. So, very interesting. We'll also be talking, of course, about the mechanics of the Hunter's Dream, and in particular, the one mechanic that I feel is missing is some sort of equivalent to hollowing, which I suppose in this game would have been beast form. And I'll be talking about how, at various points throughout the game, that the game is really worse off for missing that mechanic. But that, as I've said, is a story for another day. I have not yet mentioned, but I am recording this on Sunday, June 12th, 2015, and I hope that each and every one of you out there is having a fantastic day today. Some of you are probably aware this episode represents my second attempt at a premiere for this series. If you watched my first attempt, you will also recall that I discussed in that episode the budding community controversy. And so I wanted this series to represent a fresh start for me, so that I might be able to put that whole ordeal behind me, and so that's the reason why I decided I wanted to redo this episode. Beyond the more obvious reasons of I was not satisfied with the commentary in the episode, and there was one person who commented, I believe it was Nui Vicaire? I'm not sure, I can't remember, but who suggested very kindly that I might want to consider doing post-commentary, because once again, when I'm doing live commentary, I tend to get distracted by the gameplay and lose my train of thought a lot.
Hello, good hunter. I am a doll, here in this dream to look after you. Honorable hunter, pursue the echoes of blood, and I will channel them into your strength. You will hunt beasts, and I will be here for you to embolden your sickly spirit. Farewell, good May. Welcome. What? Did you speak with Gehrman? He was a hunter long, long ago, but now serves only to advise them. He is obscure, unseen in the dreaming world. Still, he stays here, in this dream. Such is his purpose. Ah, the little ones, inhabitants of the dream. They find hunters like yourself, worship and serve them. Speak words they do not. But still, aren't they sweet? Farewell, good hunter. May you find your worth in the waking world.
Thank you kindly. As one thing I absolutely adore about the doll is the ways in which she responds to your gestures. So there's obviously a lot going on there, but we're not going to get into all of that at this time. For obvious reasons, the episode is at about 47 minutes now, and so we don't really have time, and quite frankly, I don't fully understand the doll or the doll's significance yet at this point. It's something that I still need to do a fair bit of research for, and not to once again bring up the controversy that is hopefully behind the community now, but there's a fair bit of work that goes into these episodes. So I'm just looking at, I have a 3-page document essentially of notes that I prepare in advance of each episode, and that's another part of the reason why I struggle with live commentary, is that I'm trying to play the game, collect my thoughts, and read my notes at the same time. So right now what I'm doing is I have my video editing software open, so that is Sony Movie Studio Platinum, and I have the preview window on my main monitor, the timeline on the monitor on the left, and also my notes on my main monitor as well. So there's a lot going on, and these episodes take a lot of work. And whereas in the past I have done playthroughs that maybe haven't required all that much, like still required a significant amount of effort, but certainly nothing compared to this one. And yeah, so with that in mind, my upload schedule, past playthroughs I've done, one episode essentially every day or two. This one will likely be 1, maybe 2 per week. But as I mentioned, I really do appreciate your comments and welcome your feedback in the comment section below. But thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.